Hey guys, this week I got to talk with Scott McCulloch. He's the COO of Cliff Drysdale Management and Peter Burwash International. He had so many great insights to share with us. We talked about his career progression at Cliff Drysdale, the keys to successful club operations, his philosophies for hiring great tennis pros, and how to keep them, the transition from tennis programs to racket sports programs, and many other things I am sure you will be interested in learning about. So make sure to stay tuned until the end. I hope you enjoy listening to this conversation and have a chance to check out the other episodes. We have now over 20 episodes with leaders in the tennis industry. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, and you can also check us out at www.vitatennispodcast.com. Get ready to learn from one of the best out there only here at Vita Tennis. Here's my conversation with Scott. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Vita Tennis, the podcast for those of us who eat, sleep, breathe tennis. My name is Jennifer Gelhaus, and today I get to talk with Scott McCulloch. He is the president and chief operating officer for Cliff Drysdale Management and Peter Burwash International. He has been with Cliff Drysdale Management since 2007, where he worked his way up from director of tennis to general manager, VP of operations, and now president and COO. Scott has over 20 years of experience in the tennis industry. In his current role, he oversees daily operations for all clubs managed out of their new Braunfels office, including programming, creating short and long-term operational strategies, pro development, and most importantly, supporting directors and associates. He's originally from Sidney, Australia, and fun fact, he was coached by John Newcombe and his son Clint as a junior tennis player. Welcome, Scott, to Vita Tennis. Thank you so much for being here today. How are you?
I am great. Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you for having me on. It's a pleasure to be here. Looking forward to some fun conversation.
Yes, of course. And I always ask if I got your bio right. I know we were just talking and you said that you're not in Texas. So I will make a correction there. I know you told me you're in Fort Lauderdale, which is really cool. We're fellow Floridians.
And it is very hot this Sunday in Florida.
Oh, I am glad I'm not there. I do not miss the Florida summer at all. I'm in Massachusetts where it's much, much cooler. So, but Scott, thank you so much for being here today. We'll get right into it. I would love to hear from you and how your career developed in the tennis industry. At what point did you realize that you wanted to be in the tennis industry?
Yeah. So as a kid, I played a lot of sports as a kid, and I played a lot of basketball, football, and swam a lot because a lot of kids that have asthma swim in Australia. So I was a competitive national swimmer. And then it got to a point where it wasn't as much fun anymore, but I had to have a year-round sport. So mum took me to tennis, and that's sort of where I fell in love with tennis and started as a student and then played through my junior career and nationally and all of that. Then I realized I had to support my tennis and my training a little bit. So when I was about 15, 16, I actually got into a little bit of coaching. And so I still remember my first tennis lesson. I had a young kid that I gave him a 30-minute private lesson. And I'm surprised he stuck with it because at the end of the 30 minutes, I didn't even know if he was right-handed or left-handed because he was ambidextrous. So it was an interesting start to coaching. But I worked in the pro shop on the weekends. So I was always at the tennis center. And then I'd string rackets and started teaching. And then as I was going to college, I taught through college, and it just naturally, organically happened. And then I was, as you mentioned, good friends with the Newcombe family. They're very great people. They were great to me. And I came over to the States on a bit of an opportunity to play at the academy in Texas. And so I taught there a little bit and played there and then sort of traveled around and then came back to the States. My goal was only ever to be in the United States for 3 months, and we're going on 23, 24 years. So I'm sort of extending that 3-month stint. It was just organic. I mean, I did study sports management, but there's just something very euphoric when you're out there on the tennis court. You get to spend time with people. It's a pleasure and it's a choice. And it just became a choice that I wanted to be in positive environments, and tennis was just paving the way. I was always curious, and I was always had a growth mindset. I just wanted to learn and get better at my craft. And so that's really how it all started. It started as a young pro at 15 and then got first certified by 17 in Australia and then just continued the journey. And then once I was over here, I felt it was a beautiful place, America, and there's a lot of opportunities. So I really doubled down on trying to learn as much as I could and spent a lot of time at Texas at the John Newcombe Tennis Ranch. Then went up to the Midwest in Cincinnati to Steve Cantati's club, Harper's Point, for a couple of years. Loved the people and the family up there, but the winters were just way too harsh for me. I'm a fair weathered fan. And then moved down in 2007 to Naples, Florida. Started with Cliff Drysdale Tennis then, and that's sort of 16 years ago, come this November. So it's been quite a ride.
That's amazing because I've talked to a few guests that have mentioned that they were doing lessons when they were in their teens, 15, even I think one of them started when he was 13. I'm like, that is crazy. I can't imagine doing that at that young age. But that's really interesting. And I didn't realize that you were at Harper's Point. I was actually in Cincinnati myself for a couple of years. I was at Camargo Racquet Club. Yeah. And I also was at Western Tennis and Fitness Club, which is on the other side of town. So I'm very familiar with Harper's Point and Cincinnati. And same thing for me. I got sick of the winter and decided to move to Florida. It's brutal.
We were thinking alike.
Yeah, absolutely. But yes, the people are the best. I loved all my Cincinnati people, and Midwest people are just always so nice. I'm married to one, so I really mean that when I say that. But so what was your journey like to becoming COO at Cliff Drysdale? Like, when did you start getting more into the operations side and saw yourself more stepping away from the court and going into, the business and operations side of it?
So when I was first here in John Newcombe Tennis Ranch, I worked at the academy and the summer camps and with a lot of the adult programs. And I was always fascinated with learning where these people came from. I mean, how did they arrive here at the ranch? So that was really more of an on-court role. Than as I moved to Harper's Point, Steve's a great operator. So I started learning more and more from Steve at that point there. But I just always had a hunger to learn more and take on more. And I was fascinated by how you build things. And that's just always been my curious nature. I always feel like if I'm not challenging myself, I get a little complacent. So I was always challenging myself both on the court, then learning things off the court. Also, I think I've always been good at recognizing talent, whatever the field it is. And I was always fascinated by talented people around me, how they did their job, whether they were in finance, whether they were in marketing, whether they were in sales. So I always enjoyed conversations with those people and was always fascinated with how they excelled at their job, which sort of sparked my operational fascination. And then my first job with Cliff Drysdale Tennis was opening up a club down in Florida. And I felt very not prepared like most people do when they move into their first director position. It was a club opening up, so everything was first. So it wasn't just hopping into a machine that was moving along. Every day there was how do we set this up? What do we do here? What's this program going to look like? And then it was, every program started with 0 people. Then there was 1 person. So we had growth. So I saw everything at stages there. And so I got really fascinated with how you document that and how you put that all down and then how you can share that with team members as we started to grow that club. I think I was very lucky. Cliff Drysdale and Don Henderson were very nice to me. And I came into the company when there was like 4 clubs. So there was not much. We weren't the size we are today. But then as we started to get clubs that were coming on board, my role, I always put my hand up. I'd say, great, I'm ready to go there. And I'm ready to open up that operation because I was always fascinated by opening things up and how that would work and learning about the partners. And so just organically, it was a good fit for all of us because I probably moved 13 times in the first 10 years with the company.
Oh, wow.
And I just would set up new operations and move there and get them ready for then the next person to come in that was going to be more of the full-time solution. So I built a lot of programs and I was just fascinated by how you can build it, and the formula and the foundations you lay down. It's just like when you build tennis players. The foundations you lay down are the same everywhere. They just have different ways that you navigate the conversation. And so I feel like making a roadmap and a blueprint where you can interchange the people and the pieces out and the programs, but it's all fundamentally the same. So that's how I started. And then I started managing a few clubs out in California. Then I came back and built a club with Don in Texas, the John Newcombe Country Club. And then it just started building scale because we were getting bigger. So we needed to have more of these operations in place. So it had to be more about scale, not just I couldn't talk to everyone. So myself and the core group of our company, we really focused on putting a lot of the operation standards and procedures down and how you could sort of share that with new people in, because we were always great at attracting talented people, then bolt on all these procedures and the support around them, and they generally tend to take off. But I was always fascinated just by building things, and that's sort of what really sparked it. And so I came into the company at the right time, and it's been fun, and it's every day is a new adventure. And then for me, it's as I started to get further along, when I moved into a VP of Ops role, I sort of had to make a choice because I wasn't serving everyone to the fullest ability because I was still trying to teach while run a lot of clubs. And so I had to think, well, where's my heart at, and how do I feel like I can bring the most value? And that felt like I could affect more people and help more people by being in more of an off-court role. And so that's where I moved off-court. But I'm jealous every day when I see all of our guys out there, because when you're on the court, like you mentioned yesterday, you had 9 hours. I mean, you can be out there and no one can touch you for those 9 hours. There's no, have you got a minute? Can you take an email? Can you take a phone call? You're in pure paradise, as much as it's a grind, but you're in pure paradise for, that period of time.
It is a grind, and I don't know how long I will be able to do this where I'm teaching. I'm very much interested in, the operation side and the business side of clubs. I think it's really important to know how all that works, whether you see yourself in that role or not. I think it's important for the pros to know what's going on behind the scenes, because it helps them do a better job in every part of the role. But for your role as COO, what's the most challenging thing about doing that?
Sure. Just one thing that came to me as you were sharing that before I answer that question.
Sure.
So one thing that my parents always instilled with me when I shared with them that tennis was going to be a career for me, they were like, that's great. If that's what you're passionate about, go for it. But make sure you're the most rounded person in every area of the industry when you do that. And it took me a few years to figure out what they meant by that, but they were really indicating, this is something that I would share with every pro that's maybe listening to this podcast, is really get good on the court. Master your delivery, your knowledge, your techniques, your ability to listen, all the things that make you a great coach. But then be more valuable to yourself and learn things off the court. So when you're on the court is one part of it. Learn how they got to your club, how they got to your court, how then you service them with play options and all tournaments and events. And so learn about the financials so you can build out budgets, learn about marketing. So they were really saying that whatever you do it to the widest extent. And that would be a big piece of advice I would give to any pro out there right now, is your value is not always just going to be what you learn on the court, because you can continue to further the knowledge, but become valuable to yourself and learn things outside of the court.
Absolutely.
And I think that's something pretty important. My role as COO, the most challenging piece, I think as we continue to grow, it's continue to make sure you keep everything in check and make sure you're there for everyone. We have a philosophy as a company that our people come first. They're the leaders. We sit behind them. How do we support them? And as we continue to grow, your company goes through different cycles. We were a mom and pop at one point. So when we first got with clubs, we would say, however you need to do it with third-party management. So however the club that is hiring us wants to do anything from a pro shop procedure to an expense report. We would adapt to them. As we've then grown, we've had to go into different 0.0 versions of our company. So I think the most challenging thing for me is always to try to keep things normal at the club while you're building everything behind the scenes for the next version that's going to have scale. Because it's not like a restaurant where you can just shut down for 6 weeks and have Gordon Ramsay come in and just tear everything all down and then open it back up. You've got to keep things moving while you're building the parts in the background and being present today with what's in operations while being behind the curtains, building what you're going to use in 6 months and how it's going to affect your team. That's the challenging piece. And that also comes in with people as well. I mean, you got to make sure you're current with what everyone wants. What was important to Jennifer 6 months ago is maybe very different to what's important to Jennifer right now. So trying to make sure you still stay current with what's important to your people, because they're always going to be your biggest asset.
And how do you maintain good quality amongst the different clubs and facilities that you manage? Because, I mean, you guys have so many clubs now, especially now that you've merged with Peter Burwash. How do you maintain that quality and that standard across all of them?
Hire good people that care, create flexibility where they've got some autonomy to really put their fingerprint on programs, and then have good people that support them. And I think that's part of it. We've always believed in building a framework so you can have standards, but let people fill out, because a lot of our properties are very different. They're not all the same. Some are private, some are resorts, some are hybrids with membership and resorts, some are seasonal, like where you are right now. Some we have all the operations, some we have the tennis programming, others have different sports. So it's not going to be a Starbucks where you order the same coffee, mocha, choco, chino at every facility, but you'll see the touches that are the same. And you've got to build with simplicity, I think. Put simple things in, because simple things can get implemented every day. If it's complex, it'll fall off and you'll lose that standard. Just keep simple standards that make sense and are pretty timeless as well. And I think ones like that are great customer service and treating people nicely and always trying to have a growth mindset and get a little better at what you're doing, things like that. But that's always our goal.
It is interesting how different clubs can be, and some clubs have very different rules, and some are member owned. So yeah, I'm sure that you find some resistance sometimes from the clubs to maybe do things your way or the ways that you guys know that works well. How do you handle that, or how do you encounter that?
Sometimes it's easy. Sometimes they realize that they're bringing you in because whoever the stakeholders, the ownership or the board of directors, they realize that they may be very skilled in their occupations, but they're not skilled in racket sports operations. And they may run a good golf operation. That doesn't mean tennis runs the same or racket sports run the same. So I feel as you understand what's important to them, you can then lay out the goals of how you can achieve that. I think that's what we've done a good job of over the years, is rather than coming with answers, come in with questions to make sure we understand what's important with ownership, what their goals are, so we can help navigate a path. But it doesn't mean that it's always easy. There's always plenty of challenges, whether it's rules and restrictions because it's a private club, whether it's a resort and they've got all these different reservation systems because tennis is a penny in the bucket when a property, a Hyatt or a Hilton or a Ritz brings in 900 million or whatever it is a year in revenue. So it's learning how to work within it, understand their goals, try to create value so that you can help steer them more to how to achieve those goals, but also be patient. I mean, you can't turn them over and around overnight. It's try to practice patience and help that share that with the team as well. So, because a lot of people come in, they want to flip the program up overnight. It takes Takes time.
It does. It does. I went through that myself with my last position, which was a director role. And yeah, that can definitely be very challenging. But what do you think? Are there certain attributes or keys to a club operation running smoothly besides hiring good people? Is there anything else that you can tell us about that?
Yeah. So to having a good operation,
To having a successful club operation, yeah.
yeah, I would say everything has to be documented in the sense of it's not about one person. You could have a great director that runs a good club because they've been there for a period of time and they've got the finger on the pulse, but everything centers around them. Remove them, and the club could collapse. So I think, and a lot of the time we've had more of an osmosis attitude in tennis of just watch that person do what they do, and that means you'll be great. Mm-hmm. Rather than pulling apart, I think a good operation always starts with, sounds a bit nerdy, but a good org chart. What are the positions, not the names of the people, what are the positions that are needed to achieve success? What are the roles of those positions? How will they weave in together? Because when you can define that, then you can define how success can look like and how long that can probably take. Then once you get a good org chart, then you start getting your procedures in place. So it doesn't training as Jennifer's the director and she gets one pro, then two, then three, then four, then five, and then one pro shop person, then two, then three, then four, and five. They can all read the same resource and they can all be on the same page with how they achieve success within the operation. I think a lot of the time we hire talented people, we just throw them out there and they have to sort of bounce around the walls. If you can lay out how they can deliver a successful operation, what they can and can't do, then you start to be training people to have success on the court and off the court. Same thing on the court, then define what is your mission statement of the on-court experience so they can work within that. And I think a good director, when they do that and then they have those procedures, you can change people's faces in and out, but still keep consistent standards and operations. And then I think when you do that, you start to understand as well how much more you can scale up and put other things in. Because if everything's solid, you can add that new program because that's not going to collapse everything else because everyone else knows how to keep this moving while you step away to build that new program. And then you continue to bolt on new things. And that's where I think the best ones are. And then because people are going to change as well over the years. They're going to move on. They may move out of tennis, move places, but then it doesn't really matter as much because you can slide someone in there because it's got a good foundation. And you don't have to be a big company to do that. You just need a Excel document or a Word document. Just start writing things down and just stay consistent with it. Don't waver from it. And as soon as you see it's not happening, have conversations with your team. I think a lot of people don't want to have that conversation, so they don't bring it up. And then 5 months go by and that procedure has now fallen off to the side and everyone's in scramble mode.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And I think now with technology, it gets a little bit easier for clubs to have some consistency now with the new court reservation systems and the new CRMs and all that. I think it makes it easier to transition from one director to another. Does Cliff Drysdale, do you guys use the same systems amongst all your clubs, or do you leave that up to the club?
I wish we did, but it being third-party management, a lot of the time you have to work within what's out there. We use Microsoft Teams as our internal communication device, so we put everything centralized there. Doing that was a big step for us many years ago, because then as you do have some people add on to the team, you can sort of slot them into the history of conversations. Also, then you're not at threat of losing all of your information for that club if a computer crashes because everything was saved on someone's computer. Then in regards to point of sale and reservation systems, depends on the partnership. If it's something that we manage the property, like Western Racquet Club, we manage that one, all the operations, we put one in that we like. But then you'll go to a private country club and they'll have Jonas or Club Essentials or North Star, because that runs their homeowners association, their golf, their dues, their food and beverage. So in that case, we use a company, Play by Point. They're out of South Florida. They've done a great job in sort of really scaling. We use them for both POS and scheduler at some clubs, and then just the scheduler at others. So we may run everything off Play by Point for the court sheet, but then the charges still go through Jonas or Club Essentials or whatever the POS. The resort has Opera, Spa Soft. So yeah, I mean, we've got probably 25 to 30 of our domestic operations on Play by Point now, which is great because we can now start comparing data across clubs. We can now start making more data-driven decisions because you can look at compaction, pro utilization, all those sorts of things. I think tennis has been way behind the eight ball, way behind the curve for many, many years. And we were part of that. I mean, even up until COVID, the Ritz-Carlton Key Biscayne, which is our largest operation, which does millions in programming every year, we were still using a Cameo beauty book and a pencil because that's what the team that had been there for many years were comfortable with.
Yeah.
But technology has been behind for us.
It's crazy. I've had this conversation with a few pros because we always wonder why that's the case. And there's a few theories, one being that even that old directors maybe don't want to share that information. Like you might not want to know, you might not want other people to know how much money you're making, or you want to keep things to yourself, and I guess there's good and bad, but I feel like to grow as an industry, we need to start sharing information and looking at what works at certain clubs and how they run, just so that they can be more successful clubs, because we're not really competing. I don't think like a lot of clubs really compete against each other. I think somebody's going to join a club for a multitude of reasons. And yeah, I don't know. I'm just like, I'm very passionate about that because I think we're hurting in that sense. And we could be way ahead.
We are big believers of all ships rise with the tide. And I think it's good if someone down the road is doing something great. Yeah, kudos to them. And then we've got to figure out how we do something great. And we can, I mean, that's the backbone of every industry and people that have succeeded. It's
right.
Don't worry about the competition. Just how do we be the best version of ourselves? How do we provide the best service with what we've got? I mean, if a club's a brand new marble everywhere facility and you're a racket club that's very modest in sort of appearance, that's fine. Just be the best version of what that club can be. And we need technology. If you want to maximize it, if Jennifer and Scott are on the court, they need something that's behind them, promoting their programs, taking registrations, taking payments. So when they walk off the court, they're further along. And this is something that we've been behind on. And you've got to have the ability to take reservations and payments 24/7, 365.
Exactly.
And I track a lot of when transactions happen. It's amazing and astonishing how many transactions happen between 10 p.m. and 1 a.m. Particularly on Sundays in the summer when it's summer camp and, the parents are thinking for that week, we don't know what the kids are doing Sunday night. We're signing them up for summer camp for next week or what have you.
Yeah.
But if you had the traditional pro shop model, you'd be losing that reservation.
Exactly. We're behind, but I think it's getting better. And it's definitely on the right path.
Agreed.
But yeah, let's shift gears a little bit. I want to definitely ask you about your philosophies on hiring and training staff, in particular tennis pros. What are some of your philosophies for finding really talented tennis pros, and how do you keep them?
I think three things we've always looked for when hiring people. I think it's very common. You hear a lot of people say, hire for character, train for skill. I think we really embrace that. The three things that we've looked for as a backbone has been A, do they see this as a career? Because if they see it as a career, they normally want to invest into it. I think sometimes tennis isn't always perceived as a career in the United States, whereas in other countries, Europe, France, Australia, it's very prestigious to be a tennis professional. So I think, do they see it as a career? A, do they have a growth mindset where they want to get a little bit better, whatever that is, whether that's on court, off court, what have you? And the third one is, do they have an ownership mentality? Do they treat whatever it is, if it's their court, if it's their program, if it's their club, they treat it like it's their own? Because if they treat it like it's their own, you don't normally have to worry so much about the decisions and the effort level that gets put in. Because just like whether it's your house or your car, if it's yours, you really generally make the decisions that it's in the betterment of that item. So we look for that. By nature, the great thing for our company is we're always adding clubs. So if someone comes in and they have that and they invest and they develop themselves, it's not if they get an opportunity to move up, it's when they do. And that may be within the club they're in, or maybe to a director position and get a new club in same area or a new area. But then as we've gone through the years as well, we're very focused right now on training. I mean, we're actually right in the middle of a big project of trying to bring everything onto a big digital platform, because just like CRMs, Coach Jennifer, if she wants to digest things at 10 o'clock on Sunday night, we've got to have information and resources and training available for her then. It can't just all be that what I deliver to you is your training. There's got to be things that are there so that people can work on their skills and develop their knowledge and resources 24/7. So that's a lot of it. I mean, over the years, I think a lot of our training has been face-to-face. It's sort of having good directors and them taking some of the foundational knowledge that we have. I mean, PBI and CDT come from different ends of the spectrum, same result. Legacy PBI was very much where they used to bring you into a camp almost for a month. And
yeah, I've heard of that.
Crash course of 10, 12-hour days, really, trying to upskill everyone so they polish you up so that you sort of get deployed out to your assignment, where that may be in the world. They had a very international footprint, whereas more of legacy CDT was bring talented people in, train them on a daily. It was more of a drip feed on a daily basis, and surround them with a marketing person, an operations person, a senior director, and so that they've always got a support, both to the same end goal of a great product, a great experience for the client, because client satisfaction turns into client retention, to the same product, just different sort of thoughts of that. And then we can chat about a little bit what that looks like with PBI and CDT and Troon and how all those dynamics work. But that's really been a lot of it. I'd say we've lost some people over the years because maybe they didn't progress fast enough. And so everything that we're doing now is trying to really have a finger on the pulse as everyone comes in. It's not just relying on the director to train their staff. It's how we as a company put all of this knowledge and training resources around them that they can touch and interact with immediately on top of what they do with their director. Because directors have got a tough job. I mean, they're trying to serve many masters. Their GM, their tennis committee, their members, their pros. I mean, so sometimes you don't want to overload them, and different ones have different bandwidths and capacities, but that's sort of been our goal. So as we look at now trying to add more and more clubs, we're trying to build this out so that we've got any pro that comes into our organization can define if they want to have more of a specialized course with juniors or adults or resorts or private clubs. They'll have education there to really further that.
And do you look for different skill sets in coaches for international jobs compared to U.S. positions?
I wouldn't say necessarily different skill sets, but some people have different priorities on how they want to live their life. Some people are fascinated by being in Bora Bora or Nevis or Austria and sort of going around and seeing it. I think it becomes more about their stage of life, not necessarily their skill set. Some people have that stage where they just want to settle down, and some have this where I want to go out and see the world and have my skills as a tennis professional take me around. And I think that's even true in the domestic properties as well. Some want to stay domestically within one city, and then some are like, great, I'm ready to go to California, or I'm ready to go to Texas, or I'm ready to take the summer up to the Hamptons in New York. And I think it's yeah, but always looking for those three fundamental pieces of what we shared earlier.
And what advice would you give to someone that's looking to get into a director job, a director role at one of your clubs?
I would say go for it. Reach for the stars. But before you interview for the director position, talk to some of the directors. And whether those are people within our organizations, other organizations, check for what your understanding of the role of the director is and what theirs is. And look at directors at different facilities. I mean, a resort director is very different to a private club director, right? So I would check for a lot of that, because a lot of people, I think, they look at the position, they want the title, maybe the compensation package, the authority, but don't really understand what goes behind it. And I would vet someone as well if they said they want to become a director. Part of my interview with them would be why they want to become a director. You know, will it be something that's going to make them happy? Because some people are the happiest people in the world teaching tennis, and that's what lights their world up. And then if they look at what the roles are of a director, that might actually be what has them leave the company, because they're not going to be happy in those. They're not going to get to shine in doing the things they love. And I think it's a bit of a skills test as well at that point of, great, so what are some of the things you need to have in your ABC toolkit to be successful as a director? Practice those so you get a few of those down, and then start at a club that's not as stressful, and then work your way up over time.
Yeah, that's great advice, because sometimes you might have an idea of what that looks like, and you sometimes might not know until you're actually in it. and then realize like, oh, this is very, very different. Because a lot of people don't go, I would say most people in most tennis professionals don't go into teaching tennis necessarily thinking, I want to be a director someday. Most people go into it because they love the sport and they get into the coaching side. And then later on, they kind of see all these other opportunities. But yeah, no, that's really good advice. What do you think is the most exciting thing happening in the industry, in the tennis industry right now?
I think what's really exciting is there's been a shift with a lot of clubs. There is more courts being built in all sports, but definitely there's more tennis courts being built. I believe there's been a shift as well, where a lot of clubs, where they used to say, we've got some tennis courts, just keep my email inbox empty and take care of the people, and you're on your own. I think a lot of clubs are seeing the value of what tennis brings to their club in attracting new people, in retention, and value. So I think tennis has now been on a surge year-over-year growth for the last 3 years. I see that continuing. And I think clubs and resorts are really looking, saying, this is a valued piece of our business. I think that's exciting on the business side. I do think technology is getting better, and people, whether they were reluctant to embrace technology or not, are doing that. So I think that's exciting, because that's going to help participation and engagement and people, because everyone wants to hop on their phone and just lock in their schedule right there. I think that part's exciting. And I do believe as well that on the coaching side, more clubs and programs, because of the nature of the other sports that are coming around, are putting more investment into their beginner programs, because you've got to have good fundamental beginner programs to get people into the sport while you work on retaining the people that you've got. So I'd say those are three exciting things happening on different fronts.
And what about the addition now of the other racket sports? What are your feelings about, adding pickleball, adding padel?
Yep.
I mean, those, I guess, are the bigger ones.
Sure. I'm a tennis purist. I started in tennis, it'll always have the biggest part of my heart, but I'm a realist as well. We as a company are pro racket sports. We still have Cliff Drysdale Tennis in our name because that's what we were, and Peter Burwash, international tennis specialist. But we are in the racket sports industry. We embrace it. I would say probably 75 to 80% of our facilities have either permanent or temporary pickleball courts in place of different numbers and sizes. We have padel at 3 of our locations now, and we're looking, strategically at different partners to invest into more padel because I think padel is going to be a great option. It's got some challenges with how to monetize it in the United States because primarily it's a pay-to-play model rather when tennis and pickleball for members are generally included in your membership. So, and there's a bigger investment price, but I think it's exciting. I'm pro racket sports because I think if the big barriers that we have right now is a lot of tennis players are upset because pickleball courts are taking inventory of tennis courts away. So I think that's a piece there. Then there's the sound piece in there. But I think it's important if you put a racket sports industry, if you have good tennis beginner programs and you have people coming in through pickleball, they'll merge over to tennis. And then same thing for tennis members. If they're starting to learn a little pickleball, it creates stickiness at your club. It's another reason why they stay a member of your club and part of that experience. So you bring more value. I just think we're still learning how to operate them differently. Tennis comes through programming, pickleball and padel come through play. So that's what sort of rubs a lot of, I think, professionals the wrong way because they can't get pickleballers or padel players in a lot of programming. So they don't know where that space is. But if I looked at it as well, I would say you've probably got take padel out and put tennis and pickleball side by side, you've probably got roughly 40 million pickle and tennis players right now. If you continue that year over year for the next few years, you're probably going to have 70, 80 million racket sports players. That's probably going to be about, 20 to 25% of the population. And those sort of numbers, that I think is exciting for racket sports.
I actually just started teaching pickleball on the side. And at first I was never anti-pickleball, but kind of like, oh, here we go again. Because pickleball people are very passionate about pickleball. And I always kind of made fun of that. But now I'm actually teaching pickleball.
Yeah.
And it's actually really fun. It's really easy on the body, I think, because I'm not having to feed it, and it's a lot of it is like rally based and play based, at least for the intro to pickleball lessons that we're doing and teaching people like the basics of it. And then they're kind of on their own after a few lessons, they can go and play. It's not like tennis where tennis is, more complicated. There's always something to work on, right? And I think that's why we have jobs as tennis professionals, because there's always something, right? That you could pay a professional to help you with. But in pickleball, it's not that difficult. It's very simple. And that's why it brings in so many people. So I think that's kind of the challenge as a tennis pro to see like, well, how am I supposed to monetize that? Especially at a club where, say, like at the club where I am, like we don't charge for a lot of the events because that's part of their membership. So how do you monetize pickleball? So it gets really tricky, but the members want it because they play it at their homes in Florida or wherever. So there's definitely a demand for it. And it's just about figuring out how we can make it work for the professionals and for the club, But I think like with the CRM and all that stuff, I think it's on its way there. Yep. You just have to see it.
I think the big one on that for me is I think this is where clubs are having a look at their org charts again and start saying most of the models were built off a director of tennis. Now you've got a director of rackets. You've got pickleballers that have the same expectation of service and calendar events and all that as tennis players. So now clubs need to look at their budgets and start saying, what positions do we need to service this? Because this is a dues play. This is in the private club world, this is not a programming play. So not have directors compensated half on salary and half on commissions from teaching, because they can monetize that in tennis. They can't in pickleball as much. So you've got to change their comp packages, or add positions so that you've got someone that can take care of that complementary play, but that's not hurting the pro's pocket. But then if you've got all that data to show how many people engage, when you can show that the rackets amenity has engagement of 80-90% of the membership, it becomes a very easy piece to sort of adjust that budget line, because that's how you're going to retain them. And then I think it's a lot of our pros just really have to get good with play options. How do you run level-based play and tournaments and mixes and things that are centered around playing, not as much on coaching with pickleball?
Yeah. So do you see clubs now changing their compensation package for a director of racket? So it's more, now it's going to be more of a bigger salary. So it's not, you're not having to teach as much, because now you're doing all these other racket sports. And
correct. I don't think they've all changed yet, but those are the conversations I'm having with a lot of directors that are in our network and not in our network, ones that we do some consulting with, because it's looking at that saying, if a pro director went out and took the court 2 hours a morning, 9 to 11, 5 days a week, or 6 days a week, but now you want 3 of those days for them to go out and do a pickleball option that's complementary, for them not to be sour about that, you've got to sort of tilt that, offset that. Now, getting 20 more pickleball members, that'll offset that, so you can increase the salary. So it's just, I think, a lot of education, because you can't just change the title of director of tennis to director of rackets. And you would be shocked at how many clubs around the country, particularly with directors that have been in place for 10 to 15, 20 years, have the same job description from 15 years ago.
Yeah.
We need to set the model up so that the people that deliver can be successful and taken care of. And then the rest will sort of fall in place.
And what do you think about resorts that are, like there's some resorts that may be seasonal, but now they're adding, say, platform, or they're adding something else, and now they want it year round. But, all the challenges with housing and cost of living and all these things, where it's like, well, does it make sense to have somebody there year round being a director of rackets when the facility is mostly used in the summer? I mean, I don't know if you have any place that is like that, but
sure. We do have a few seasonal clubs. It's not a large part of our portfolio, really. For that piece right there, it's challenging to find staffing for certain parts of the year, and then find them. We can always put them in different clubs outside of that, but to have year over year the same person coming back, that's a challenge. That's going to cycle through, and sometimes it's just as much work for a 4 or 5 month club as what it is for a year-round club, because you're always picking it back up. If the club's comfortable and has the budget to support someone year-round, or you can repurpose them somewhere else, that's great. But that's a big challenge, because it's got to also fulfill them. They've got to be excited to want to be there in the cold or slow months.
Yeah.
So, and some of those clubs, it's, can you find alternative partnerships where there's a club in town that has an indoor facility, and you can flex them between different facilities so they can stay busy. And we're not really big in the platform space. We've got 1 or 2 clubs that have platforms, so we're hoping to get more in that space moving forward. But the staffing challenges are very real, as I'm sure you're aware of it. The supply is very low, but the demand is very high right now.
Yeah. So, which is good for us are in it, but definitely need to figure out how we can attract more people to our industry. And I guess we'll see. But are there any future plans that you're excited about with Cliff Drysdale that you can share with us?
Sure. I mean, I think one of them is Troon, which is the largest golf management company in the world. They purchased Cliff Drysdale Tennis back in 2018. So we're just coming around this month on our 5-year anniversary with Troon. And then Troon purchased PBI in December of 2021. So 2022 was really our first year under the big Troon umbrella together. So what we're really excited about now is we've got so many talented people in our PBI and CDT branded clubs that this big project that we're embarking on, I spoke about, a big digital platform where pros are able, under all brands, White Label, Troon, PBI, and Cliff Drysdale, they're going to have more resources and career development at their fingertips. So we put more pros in the driver's seats of knowing how they can steer and navigate and accelerate their career. And that's something that I'm super passionate about and super excited about, because the more we can give everyone that, they're going to be able to invest in themselves and further themselves. And I think that's going to be super exciting. Then there was an announcement the other day as well that Troon had just purchased the 18 managed clubs that Invited, formerly Club Corp, has formerly under Club Corp. So that's going to be some more clubs probably coming onto the platform.
Oh, wow.
In the upcoming years in some capacity, whether it's just support, consulting, or helping the team out. So I think for us, we've got a lot of that. We've got a growth mindset. Our ownership has a growth mindset, which is great. So I think that's what we're excited about, is building that scale now so we can take on another 10, 20, 30, 40 clubs and continue to keep the quality and the standards up high and keep it in today's market. I mean, I've always felt we've been pretty innovative over the years. And I think that's something we're always going to try to remain that way. And the last thing I'd share on what we're excited about is we have a pretty nice sized travel business. So we have a lot of camps that run year round at a lot of our resorts and facilities that are open to anyone that's in tennis and pickleball. So we're going to have more pickleball camps coming online, then also the continued growth with our tennis camps with different signature events and things like that. So yeah, I think it looks pretty bright. It's pretty exciting ahead with what we're doing with our team and growing that, and then also bringing on more clubs and more travel. And yeah, we're excited for the future.
That's cool. Will they ever be under one name?
We made that commitment to both Cliff and Peter that we'd keep Cliff Drysdale Tennis and Peter Burwash International. That was a commitment we made to both. We are believers of trying to have one experience, so a very similar experience for every associate, no matter which brand they're in. It's sort of Coke and Pepsi, though. I mean, they've got a little bit of a different flavor up front, but behind the scenes, we use the same engine in every club. And so it's fun as well. I'd say there's more of an international footprint as well. PBI has a bigger international footprint than what CDT has had. But they've both been leaders in the sport for many years, and so it's fun, and it's great to have both of them there as well.
That's awesome. And Scott, before you go, I always ask this, is if you can share with us the Grand Slam moment of your career and the double bagel moment of your career, your tennis career.
So my biggest moment in my tennis and
like the high and the low.
High and the low of my tennis career. Gosh, I would say in playing or in teaching?
Either one. As long as it involves tennis, one way or another.
Okay, yeah. I think probably the highest it's sort of an ongoing moment. I derive a lot of pleasure and passion from seeing those who work for us succeed. So what drives me every day is seeing that we build things and seeing some of the people that I maybe taught or worked for us as a summer camp pro are now running some of our biggest operations. And so for me in tennis, seeing them become then leaders and then shaping and paying it forward the next group, that for me on a professional side is the highest. I think on a playing side, it was when I was in France and I won a couple of tournaments in France and I won a few $100. I was okay. It wasn't phenomenal, but I lived out of a tent for 3 months in France and just sort of backpacked around to go from one tournament to the next. I felt like I was a millionaire. My bank account didn't reflect it, but my life experience did. And I think having the courage to do that helped create for me an open mindset of always wanting to grow and do different things. Double bagel moment. Well, I had plenty of double bagel matches. a double bagel one that does come to mind is I played my first tournament in Germany, and you didn't get the draw until the day of. And so I drew Andre Pavel, who was top 20 player in the world, and I'm on red clay, and I haven't really played anything on red clay. And so, yeah, that was a pretty fast double bagel.
That was a literal double bagel moment.
That was a literal double bagel moment. And then I think, professionally as well, it's, over the years, we've lost a couple of clubs that if you just felt, that sort of always sits in your stomach as a bit of a pit, because you always want to feel like you go into everything to succeed and do great. But I think that also turns into the motivation to learn from it as well, and how do you continue to serve people going forward.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for doing this. It was wonderful talking to you. And I'm sure that a lot of people listening are going to, find this super useful. So thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me. And congrats on success so far of the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to Vida Tennis. If you would like to get in contact with me, please email me at vidatennispodcast@gmail.com. If you would like to support the podcast, please leave us a review or share our content on social media or with someone who you think will enjoy listening to these conversations. Thanks for listening, and until next time.